The contemporary internet and the tools that make it up give us an immense opportunity to reorganize almost any aspect of our own lives.
So if you can create an encyclopedia with 1 million people who've never met, but the quality is just as good as Britannica, what else could you create?
There is this possibility of using these tools to do massive things, which is completely unexplored at the moment.
And we can work together.
These tools have lowered the cost of doing things to the point where our desire to engage with one another is enough to get things now to happen at a very large social scale rather than just a sort of smaller family and friends scale.
My name is Eric. I'm 19 and I've never been overseas. And I'm going to be staying with Couchsurfers.
The question you have to ask yourself, given how active the users are, is Couchsurfing a small organization because it's got 7 formal employees, or is it a huge organization because it has this enormous number of collaborators? It's the same for Wikipedia, it's the same question for Flickr, it's the same question for YouTube.
I'm going to be meeting my Couchsurfing host, Alan. I've never met him before except online. He'll be hosting me for 2 nights. There's a lot of unknowns.
The old model of social trust and anointed experts is one of only many, many patterns in which society can both exhibit trust and gain value from those relationships. And we're seeing the other patterns reestablish themselves.
It's another world.
If you want to use the phone, call someone. I have Skype.
There are ways in which we can trust one another. Critically, the Couchsurfing site doesn't just work by turning up addresses of random strangers in remote countries. It actually has a number of mechanisms in it, as do many of these services, eBay perhaps most famously with the reputation market. It has a number of mechanisms. I trust sharing things with you if you and I may share again in the future, or if we know someone in common. And all of those patterns, which were previously limited by the lack of real group communication tools, have now reappeared.
Help yourself. Enjoy the food. Hope you like it.
Okay, yeah, it smells amazing.
What's happened in the 20th century, I think, was really the anomaly. We're actually seeing a reversion to a very common and deep human pattern of doing things because we like each other, doing things because we care for each other, doing things to get recognition and to get sort of reputational capital.
These days we have mechanisms for joining together lots of individuals based on their own self-interest that are now competitive with the power of institutions.
Hierarchies are very inefficient, they're very slow-moving, they concentrate power and information at the top, and they often deny people opportunities to take initiative, to share ideas and to seek solutions themselves, and they often rob people of a sense of agency.
The big shift I think that's going on is the idea that everyone is available for group action. Doesn't mean everyone will participate in group action, it doesn't mean that all participation will be equal, but it does mean that everybody can get involved.
Just compare open source software in Microsoft. Microsoft spends billions to develop products which are less sophisticated than Linux. Linux is this large open source software writing community. Linux doesn't have a head office. It doesn't have any corporate jets. It doesn't have any away days. It doesn't have any human resources department. It has none of the stuff that large organizations have, and yet it manages to produce something which is reliable and is used by governments all over the world. Across the spectrum, from banking, education, health, through to entertainment and culture, you'll see a gradual move over the next 2 decades towards much more open models of organisation. And that's a very, very powerful recipe.
Throughout the 20th century, we created wealth through the vertically integrated corporation. It did everything from soup to nuts. Why does the firm exist? If markets are the best mechanism for determining how goods and resources are allocated, why isn't everybody an independent contractor at every step along the way in production? The answer is collaboration costs. Because the web drops collaboration costs, consumers can now produce. No longer about hooking up online or creating a gardening community. This is becoming a new mode of production. And it's beginning to fundamentally change the way that we orchestrate capability in society, the way that we innovate and create goods and services. And the corporation is going through, I think, the biggest change in a century.
I think the losers will be the people who say, I'll always make better decisions. The winners will be the ones that are more open-minded and understand that the world is changing and the internet is a huge opportunity to make things better. It shouldn't always be looked at as a threat.
Of course, there are lots of challenges in doing something like this. There'll be saboteurs. There'll be some people who won't have access to the web. There's the whole complexity of millions of ideas and how these get aggregated together and the good ones come to the fore. But these are all in the category of implementation challenges. They're not in the category of reasons not to do it.
In any revolution, there are downsides. But I'm optimistic that we're living through what economists would call a positive supply-side shock to the amount of freedom in the world. More people can say more things to more people than ever in history, and that is still growing enormously. And I think in the times when we've seen enormous increases in intellectual or political freedom, there has certainly been a period of chaos immediately afterwards. But that over the long haul, the values of those changes have been not just mainly positive, but enormously positive for society in situations where the social value is really about other people caring enough rather than someone being paid to provide that value. And where the end point of that is, I don't know. But I do think the end result is going to be quite profound.